Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and another edition of Anniversary Albums. Today we're going to be looking at albums that are having a significant anniversary in the month of July 2024. For those of you who are new to this series, when I say a significant anniversary, I mean one that ends in a 5 or a 0. So 50th, 25th, 40th, 35th, that sort of thing. You'll get the hang of it as we go along. As usual, I've picked out 10 albums. There's a bunch I've had to leave out, so please do let me know in the comments which ones you think I should have included. And let's start straight away with an album that is having its 20th anniversary in the month of July. It was originally released on the 5th of July 2004. It's one of my favorite albums by this band, and that is The Spine by They Might Be Giants. This was coming off, I think the album before this was Mink Car, and I really love that album too. They started the 21st century really strongly, They Might Be Giants, and I would argue that they've kept going pretty strong in the 21st century. You've got the wonderful Experimental Film, which was the lead-off single. I love Memo to Human Resources. Wearing of Raincoats, great. Prevenge, great Flansburgh song, that one. Thunderbird, Bastard Wants to Hit Me, with a very artful use of auto-tune in that song. The World Before Later On, Au Contraire, It's Kicking In, great song. I Can't Hide From My Mind. I really identify with the sentiment of the title of that song. But yeah, just a wonderful, wonderful They Might Be Giants album, top to bottom. Absolutely love it. If you kind of fell off the They Might Be Giants train in the 90s and you never hopped back on, this is a great place to hop back on, The Spine. Absolutely love it. The next album we're going to have a look at is having its 45th anniversary in the month of July. It was originally released on the 6th of July 1979. It is the debut album by this legendary new wave band from Athens, Georgia. I'm of course talking about the B-52s self-titled album. I mean, this has got Rock Lobster on it. What more do you need to say? But it's also got Planet Claire, another sort of all-time B-52s classic. But it's also got wonderful songs like 52 Girls and Dance This Mess Around. There's a Moon in the Sky called The Moon. Lava. I always loved 6060842, which was actually the B-side of the Rock Lobster single, or at least it was here in Australia. And that single was the very first single I ever owned. So yeah, I absolutely adore this B-52s album. Might not quite be my favorite B-52s album, but it's definitely top 2 or 3. Absolutely stunning debut. The next album we're going to have a look at is the oldest album we'll be looking at today. It is having its 60th anniversary in the month of July. It was originally released on the 10th of July way back in 1964. And that is A Hard Day's Night by the Beatles. I've done a Beatles studio albums ranked. I'll leave a link to that in the description. This was one of the highest ranked of early Beatles albums on that list because I am someone who prefers sort of, you know, Rubber Soul and on Beatles. But I love the early stuff too, and this is one of my favorite early Beatles albums. Just a great example of, you know, early 60s beat music. Every song written by John Lennon and Paul McCartney. 13 wonderful songs. I mean, it's got the killer title track. I Should Have Known Better, If I Fell, George gets the lead vocal on I'm Happy Just to Dance With You, And I Love Her is a beautiful Paul ballad, Tell Me Why, Can't Buy Me Love, great single as well. That was actually released before the album. And then the B-side are the songs that didn't make it into the film, but they're still really good songs. Things like Anytime at All, I'll Cry Instead, Things We Said Today, one of Paul's early masterpieces, I reckon. I mean, this album is very much dominated by John Lennon, but the few songs that Paul gets on here are really good songs. When I Get Home, You Can't Do That, which was a favourite of George Harrison's back in the day, and I'll Be Back, really lovely song to close the album out. So yeah, absolutely wonderful Beatles album. Love it to death. The next album we're going to have a look at is having its 35th anniversary in the month of July. It was originally released on the 11th of July 1989, and that is Mind Bomb by The. I really love The. You know, those first three The albums to me are close to perfect. This is the first one with Johnny Marr is on. You know, it's got the wonderful Beaten Generation, which was the single off this album, but you've also got the Violence of Truth and Good Morning Beautiful, Kingdom of Rain, August and September, Beyond Love. Yeah, I mean, you know, alternative rock, post-punk, bit dancey at times, you know. That's the kind of thing you got with The right from the beginning, and this album continues that on in a wonderful tradition, I think. Really love this album. I was really happy to pick this vinyl copy up, I think for $10 or something. So, yeah, great album. The next album we're going to have a look at is the youngest album that we're looking at today. It's having its 10th anniversary in the month of July. It was originally released on the 15th of July 2014. It is the most recent album by this artist. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to put any albums out anymore. Real shame, because he went out on a great one, and I'm talking about Mandatory Fun by Weird Al Yankovic. Now, I've done a Weird Al studio albums ranked as well. I'll leave a link to that in the description. The parodies on this album are great. Things like Handy, Foil, Word Crimes was his most recent top 40 hit in the US. You know, Inactive, Tacky. Tacky was sort of like the first song that got released. He released like 8 or 9 songs as videos, like one after the other, each one a day. I remember when this came out, and it was wonderful. You know, every day you get a new Weird Al clip. Absolutely wonderful. But the style parodies, like the original songs written in the style of people, I think, again, some of the best stuff on here. Lame Claim to Fame is great. The sports song, you know, sort of a sports fighting song. My Own Eyes is done in the style of Foo Fighters. Wonderful polka medley as always. Now that's what I call polka. Mission Statement. Oh, what a great song, done like Crosby, Stills and Nash style. Absolutely brilliant. First World Problems, really funny song, done in the style of the Pixies. And then Jackson Park Express is one of his sort of epic album closers. It's a wonderful album. If it is going to be his last album, he went out on an absolute high. Got to see Weird Al in concert last year. It was absolutely wonderful. Highly recommend him if he's in your town. Check out the show because he's great. The next album we're going to have a look at is having its 50th anniversary in the month of July. It was originally released on the 19th of July 1974, and that is On the Beach by Neil Young. Now, this was the third recorded but the second released of his so-called Ditch trilogy. Tonight's the Night was actually recorded before this but didn't get released until a year after. This is one of, you know, the Ditch trilogy I really, really love. And, you know, you get these wonderful blends of his sort of folky country kind of stuff with the really hard crunchy stuff as well. And those are the Neil Young albums I really like the best, where you've got that sort of mixture of those two sides. You know, you've got Walk On, See the Sky About to Rain, Revolution Blues, For the Turnstiles, Vampire Blues. Great song. On the Beach, the title track. One of my favorite Neil Young songs. Motion Pictures and Ambulance Blues. He's, you know, a lot of these songs are blues named. Like, they're not necessarily, I mean, they are bluesy, but they're not straight blues, you know. So, yeah, it's a really great album, and one of my favorite Neil Young albums. Probably, you know, definitely top 10, maybe top 5. I don't know. The next album we're going to have a look at is also having its 50th anniversary in the month of July. It was released on the 22nd of July 1974, so just 3 days after On the Beach. It is one of this artist's classic period albums, and that is Fulfillingness's First Finale by Stevie Wonder. You know, this period from the early 70s sort of to the end of this, to sort of, 1976. A lot of that, people consider that Stevie Wonder's sort of absolutely golden period, and it's hard to argue with that. I mean, it's got Smile Please, it's got Heaven is 10 zillion light years away, Too Shy to Say. Maybe Boogie on Reggae Woman's not my favourite track on the album, but it's still good. Creepin', Oh, You Haven't Done Nothing, oh, killer way to open side 2. It Ain't No Use, They Won't Go When I Go, yeah, it's a wonderful album. Please Don't Go. Love this album to death. Love all of those albums to death, but I've never met a Stevie Wonder album I didn't like. Even the 80s stuff that sort of people poo-poo, I still think there's some great stuff on those albums. Now the next album, in fact the next 2 albums, were released on exactly the same day. They're both having their 55th anniversary in the month of July. They were both released on the 25th of July 1969. The first one has 2 different album covers, and it is the debut self-titled album by Yes. That's the European cover. And then this is the cover we got here in Australia, and I think they got this in the US as well. This is Baby Yes. They're still kind of finding their sound, still kind of finding their way. They're doing some cover versions. They're not quite the progressive rock band that they would become in a couple of years' time, but this is still a really good album. It's kind of charming in its innocence, I think. You know, Beyond and Before is a great stomping album opener. Great cover of I See You. Yesterday and Today's a great song, Looking Around. Harold Land. Wonderful cover of Every Little Thing by the Beatles. I'm a huge Beatles fan, but I'm not a big fan of Beatles covers, generally speaking. But Yes's version of Every Little Thing absolutely smokes. Love it to death. Sweetness, really, really beautiful, gentle ballad. The most tender John Anderson vocal I think I've ever heard in my life. And then the wonderful Survival to finish it off. Really promising debut. They would go on to bigger and better things, but this album's still really, really good and well worth checking out if you've never listened to it. And the other album that's having its 55th anniversary and was released on the 25th of July 1969 is the second album by this band, and that is Jethro Tull's Stand Up. And I always love the sort of pop-up book in the gatefold. It's a wonderful album. This is the first album, there it is, popped up. This is the first album with Martin Barr on guitar, who of course would be a mainstay for many, many years. You got wonderful New Day Yesterday, Jeffrey Goes to Leicester Square, wonderful version of Bach's Bourrée, Nothing Is Easy, Fat Man. You know, they're really in their sort of still bluesy and folky kind of thing. They haven't gone progressive rock yet, but you can hear hints of where they were going to go with it. But it's a wonderful album, and the remaster with the surround sound mix by Stephen Wilson and all that sort of thing, absolutely breathtaking, wonderful, wonderful. And then the last album we're going to look at today is also having its 55th anniversary in the month of July. It was released on the 30th of July 1969, and that is In a Silent Way by Miles Davis. Now this is really considered the beginning of his jazz fusion period. He was sort of flirting with it a little bit on the previous album, Nefertiti, but here he's definitely going into it. I mean, he even calls this sort of new directions in music by Miles Davis. So, I mean, there's basically there's two pieces on each side, but they're arranged so that they flow into one side-long piece. You have shh and peaceful on side one, and you have in a silent way and it's about time on side two. But they kind of like, they'll take one piece and play it for a while, and then the second piece will come in, and then they'll go back to the first piece. So kind of like sandwiched. And it's really innovative stuff. You know, he would go on to really expand this sound with the next album, which was Bitches Brew. But I mean, this is where it all started. You've still got the second great quintet here, but they're augmented by people like Joe Zawinul and John McLaughlin and Chick Corea, you know, who would all go on to lead their own very successful bands. You know, Chick would do Return to Forever and the Chick Corea Electric Band, and, you know, that was his fusion sort of stuff. Joe Zawinul, of course, would do Weather Report, and John McLaughlin would found the mighty Mahavishnu Orchestra. All wonderful jazz fusion bands, but all launched by Miles Davis and by this record and the next record. So there's no overstating how important this record is in the history of jazz and jazz fusion and jazz rock. Absolutely seminal album. So there you have it. Those are my 10 anniversary albums for the month of July 2024. As I said, please let me know in the comments which ones you think I should have included that I didn't, because I always have a bigger list that I select this 10 from. I'd love to know which albums you think I should have included, and maybe they're even albums that I didn't even think of including. So I always love it when you guys come up with those, because they make me go and listen to albums that I wouldn't have thought of listening to. Let me know also in the comments which of these are your favourites, which ones maybe you don't care for so much. Please do like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to have a look at some of my other anniversary album shows, I have a playlist for those. If you want to see some of my studio albums ranked shows, I have a playlist for those. And if you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram, Twitter, and a bunch of other places. And I also have a dedicated Bicyclelegs Facebook page. Links are all in the doobly-doo. Please do give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.